Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back, everyone. Glad you could join me here today on episode 2328 of the Cabral Concept, where we are going to be going over all of the dangers of hidden mold and where you may find it in your house or even office. So I've done a bunch of podcasts on mold toxicity before. I'm going to link those up. If you're not familiar with stealth pathogens, mold is one of the most common stealth pathogens out there. Now, why is it called a stealth pathogen in the first place? Well, essentially mold begins to grow. It could be from water damage. It could be from food contaminations, a lot of like grains and nuts and even some canned foods, if it's not at the right pH, can actually start to grow mold. But the truth is that when mold begins to grow, it's invisible to the human eye. So you have mold spores going around your house or even in your food, and you don't necessarily see them. That's the real danger of these stealth pathogens. And so you don't wake up one day like, oh, I think I have some mold exposure. That just really doesn't happen. And since some people are definitely attuned to the scent of it, but most aren't. And again, when it's at a low level, well, you're not really picking it up. Now, the bigger issue is as well, if our immune system is slightly depleted at all, then it allows that mold to really take hold in our body. And the reason is that our immune system isn't able to fight it off like it should. And these are really, really important things. This is why I'm typically talking about checking for mold in your home. We'll go through the different spaces today. Having an air filter that actually filters mold. You can see always all my recommendations and what I use in my own family at stephencabral.com/resources. Those are resources. Those are just my recommendations. Again, what I use. And I have lots of product reviews on those too. But what it ends up happening is that maybe months later, people end up feeling run down. They have brain fog. They start to get skin rashes. They start to get headaches. They start to get migraines. They start to develop more chronic allergies. Or then it becomes real chronic. And what does it do? Well, it leads then to autoimmune issues and any type of inflammatory issue. So that's why this is so important to look at it. Again, there's many different stealth pathogens. I'm going to link them up, but they're not always the first thing that your PCP or your specialist or your doctor will think to look for. It's also why it is good to test if you have a lot of these symptoms. But of course, that's always your prerogative. There's actually two ways to test. You can test your home for mold spores. It's really simple. They're just mold plates, essentially. They're plastic, like Petri dishes. That's it. And you'd put them in the areas in your home where you think you'd have mold. And again, we'll go over those in just a minute. Or you can actually have a mold remediation company come into your home and test. It's typically free if you call them, because if there is mold, then of course they want you to hire them to remediate it, which just simply means to remove it, which is no small task, that's for sure, but certainly beneficial for you and your family. Might even be covered by homeowners insurance. You'd have to check, of course. The other thing is actually testing your body for mycotoxins from mold. These are essentially the waste products or poison that comes from the mold itself. So what you're doing is you're testing for these certain mycotoxins like ochratoxin A, let's say. And that is a simple urine-based test where you'd be able to see how much mold you've been exposed to, if any, because hopefully you've been exposed to none. But the problem is that, again, if it's invisible or you're getting it from the outside, so for example, in New England, when the leaves fall off the trees and they begin to decay, we have mold spores in the air. Not a good thing, right? And then in the spring, when the snow is melted and all of those decayed leaves and maybe moldy grass is there, well, then there's mold spores in the air as well. That's about just over 50% of all homes in New England, and that includes the UK as well, our, I guess, sister country. They have mold in the home, and a lot of that is from the outside at wet environment as well. But let's go over right now where you can check. Remember, there's always, so the thing is, whenever I bring these episodes to you, it's public awareness. That's what it's all about. Again, I wish I knew these things. I had mold toxicity for sure when I was growing up and into my early 20s. And luckily I was able to deal with that along with the gut issues as well. So we're not going to go with how to deal with it today. I've chatted about that on other shows. Again, I will link up those other shows on mold today, stealth pathogens, and then all about mold at stevencabral.com/2328. All right. So let's go over those spots. I've made a little checklist for you. This is super important. One of the big ones that I'm an advocate for is every year having your duct work checked out. You wouldn't believe it, but if you have air conditioning that's being kind of, you have those vents in your house, the HVAC, mold can begin to grow in there. And here's why. So if there's a differential in temperature between the ambient, like the outside air, and then the coolness blowing through the actual ductwork, well, what happens is once that ductwork kind of settles out, there can be some condensation. That condensation over time can actually lead to mold. Here's the crazy thing. The mold is inside the ductwork, and then it blows into what? All of the different rooms in your house. And again, this is essentially invisible to the naked eye. You're not going to see it. Black mold is visible. That's, of course, we'll go through that one in just a moment. But ductwork is one of the big places that you would find mold. That's certainly one of them. And again, it's why you want an air filter in your house. But really, again, this is just like natural health and integrative health. You want to get to the root cause. The root cause is you have mold in your ductwork. So sure, have an air filter in your rooms, but better than even that would be to actually clean out the mold in the first place. All right, so that's a big one. The second that goes along with it is just all the vents. So if you're blowing cold air through these vents, and let's say it's even in your bathroom or another place where there can be, again, heat differentials, you're showering, then there's this steam vapor that goes up, right? Well, that steam can go onto what? Your drywall. We'll talk about that in a moment, but also up into the vent. So one of the most common places that a mold remediation firm will test, and you should as well, is in that bathroom vent, typically in the ceiling. Make sure that's cleaned out. Make sure that is not collecting mold because it's just going to blow back into your bathroom. All right. We started talking about the bathroom. Let's go a little bit more in depth on that. Check the bathroom shower, bathroom tub as well. So you may find on some of the actual tile the beginning of what looks like specks, like little brown specks. That's the beginning of black mold or mold in general. So definitely use whatever cleaning product you feel is best for you and your family. I use a bunch of natural ones. Again, you can find just great companies that I promote because I believe in just raising this whole industry up at stevencabral.com/resources. Again, I also have do it yourself. You can make your own cleaner if you want using vinegar, essential oils, and a few other things, and plenty of podcasts on that too. All right, so check that out on the tile, but also check up in the ceiling. Oftentimes in the corners, you will start to see, again, a little bit of what looks like dirt. It's not necessarily dirt. It's most likely not dirt. It is mold growing. Check the corners of your bathroom. Any place where there can be that steam, right? Really, really important. That's why when you use a sauna, like a really good sauna, what is the sauna made out of? Well, it's mold-resistant wood, naturally mold-resistant wood, like a birch, beech wood, cedar, red cedar, those types of things. All right? All right. Not as common, but you can have mold in your chimney. Not as common, but you can. And the big difference, and this is, I kind of want to keep trying to impress upon you this point, that when you get hot to cold and you get any type of water accumulating, you can get mold. So mold is going to grow most easily in damp environments. Not like heavy rain. It's not necessarily that. It's actually just this dampness. And so if you have a chimney and it's cold outside, right? Because probably that's why you may have a chimney, put it on a fire, and you are getting mold, you are getting water in the top of that chimney. It could be a presence for mold. Not as common, but certainly could be a possibility. That is one to at least look for. And the big one is just roofing in general, flashing around, skylights. If you've ever had a water leak in your roof, mold grows really easily. So of course you'd want to check your attic if you have an attic, and you just want to check for leaks in general. Super important. I would say not as common would be, again, back to the bathroom, toilets, sinks, any leaking, any water that's kind of gone around the base of the toilet. But if you have tile floors, you can start to get some mold. There's no doubt about it. But hopefully, again, you're using some type of cleaning product to clean those floors. But just check too behind the sink. Sometimes water can leak down behind the sink onto the drywall, and that can certainly be a big issue. Again, just like you can get in the corners of your drywall in your bathroom too. Big one is going to be a dishwasher. Dishwasher, let's start there first, because you can sometimes smell it. Like literally there can be water under or behind your dishwasher if it's not a tight seal. And again, what do we have with a dishwasher? All right, it has a heat cycle. It has this steam. It's cleaning all of your dishes. Well, what's that giving off? Condensation. So unless it's an airtight seal, that condensation can start to build up behind your dishwasher or below it, or even under, and this is kind of different, but under your kitchen sink. How many people have had a leak below their kitchen sink before? Many people, right? Many people with their garbage disposal or their sink. Well, I'm telling you right now, that is one of the most common spots to detect mold in your health. Like 100%. So many times I've just asked people to check, and they've had mold for sure underneath that sink or potentially behind the dishwasher. So another place to look. And then going back to the same type of appliance, more or less, would be a washing machine. So your washing machine, and I'll give you one. Back in the day, my wife and I were renting this little apartment, and it didn't even have an exhaust vent out for the dryer. It actually went into this cup, and the cup had a little bit of water, and that would just basically catch everything. It was kind of gross, to be honest with you. But that's you just started out your life. You're living in a little one bedroom in Boston, and that's the way that it was. And so for sure, there was mold building up in that. There's no doubt about it. And inside that dryer vent. So check out that dryer vent. That's an easier one to clean out. And then just make sure that around your washing machine and dryer that there's no mold accumulating. All right. So again, these are just kind of things to look for, and doing your best to clean down those surfaces. You can get rid of the mold fairly easily. This is also one of those times to wear like an N95 mask. If you find mold, when you're cleaning it, it's going to come up in the air. So bring in that air filter to where you're cleaning, and if you want, wear gloves, just some rubber gloves, and just get out your do-it-yourself cleaning kit or another thing just to be able to kill that mold. So really, really important. Borax, vinegar, these things are all very, very useful. All right, a couple more I wanted to share with you. If you're like me, again, when I was living in some of my apartments around Boston and even in Providence as well, that air conditioning units that you pop into your window, you kind of pull out for the season, and not notorious for growing mold inside, like absolutely notorious. I mean, I don't know the percentage, but really high for the number that grow mold inside. So what you can take off the front panel, take off any panels that you can, try to clean in the inside. You actually will probably see the mold growing. So not ideal. All right, one more I wanted to share with you for the day, and that is drywall. Now, this is a bit trickier. All the rest, you probably be able to find. The ductwork might be more of a challenge. There's no doubt about that. But drywall is the big one. And that is because if you've had a leak, then the water can actually seep behind the drywall. So what happens at that point? Well, over time, that water, that moisture, leads to mold growth. And then over time, that leads to black mold. That black mold, that toxicity, can actually move through into your house. So it's not ideal. I had this happen when I was living in my last place in Boston, and it was not good. But our neighbors, again, good people, but accidents happen. They overflowed their kitchen sink, and they weren't watching it. That was the bottom line. Like one of their kids had it on. It went all down the back wall, one of our window walls of our condo. So, again, my wife and I, knowing about the dangers of mold, we had to pull all of it out. So we pulled all that drywall out because it would have, like in New England, it would have grown mold. There's just no doubt about it. So we had to take out part of the ceiling. We had to take off the molding. We had to take out the entire wall of drywall and let it dry, and then replace all of, because it was brick on the outside, replace the insulation and replace the drywall just to make sure we were good. And we actually put in wet wall instead, just because we didn't want that to happen again. A wet wall is just more sealed. It can still, again, the mold can still grow in insulation, etc. But that was one thing that we had to do. If you suspect mold in your office, again, I've told this story before, but one of my colleagues who's a doctor wasn't feeling well, starting to get run down, starting to get colds more often, starting to get post-nasal drip. This was unlike him. And they found it in the ducts, and they found it in the drywall behind his office. I'm glad that they actually did the work and they checked for him. But people are taking it much more serious. They really are. And I think that that's a good thing, because mold is one of those things that just creeps up on you, and it can really be devastating for your health. But the good news is you can fix it just like everything else. You are able to reverse this. You need to remove the mold. Then you need to build back up your body, your immune system. But always start with the source, get rid of the mold, whatever you're exposed to, and then work on the body as well. Hopefully this was helpful. I will leave all of the previous shows and show notes, the mycotoxin test, and all sorts of fun resources at stevencabral.com/2328. Hopefully this has been helpful. Please do feel free to share the show with anyone you believe it could serve. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only two ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stevencabral.com/rainbarrel.